Abbie. I love talking about learning, the learning process. I was a teacher for about 3 years in the public school system, and then I was here for 2 years. And now I'm home with my kids. But today we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. So the word multiple intelligences is in the title, so we're going to touch on that. And then we're going to go into an activity, which is really cool, I think. It's a really good activity. And then after that, we're going to talk about the learning process. And if you guys have any questions along the way, please let me know. Okay? Different intelligences is essentially something that is not related to an IQ level. It's a different way of thinking or a different way to approach the process of thinking. And there's different ones. One that I think we all can kind of think about or maybe know someone is this musical intelligence, which is someone that can play an instrument really well. They can sing really well. They're just very musically gifted. They understand rhythm or musical patterns very easily. Okay? Can anybody think of someone like that?
My husband would, yes. My husband will just be sitting here and he'll just start drawing.
Yeah. There's also a visual spatial intelligence. These are individuals that are good at puzzles, interpreting pictures. They do really well with visual information, so graphs, patterns, charts, they really interpret that well. Let's see. They can also manipulate objects in space well, and an example for this would be, there's an individual that I know that has a lower IQ level or score, but can build these elaborate Lego structures and models. Very detailed, just very elaborate. So doesn't do so well in terms of reading or writing or schoolwork, but does really good with manipulating objects, building, manipulating pieces in front of them. So that's kind of an example for that one. We also have, interpersonal intelligence. These are individuals that communicate really well with others. They're able to relate to others. They do public speaking really well. So I just want you to hold on to that. The idea that different people approach thinking in a different way. Okay. And now we're kind of going to switch gears into this activity. Okay, so I'm going to pass these out real quick. And if you would, please write your name and your address with your dominant hand.
Right in print.
Please write your name and address with your dominant hand. And when you're finished with that, please flip it over and write your name and address with your non-dominant hand. So I'm guessing the majority of us, that's probably our left hand.
No. Write your name and address with your dominant hand and flip it over here with your round off. Why do we have to write so much with our hand? You just have pretty handwriting. Struggle. You can read mine at least, I guess.
So those of you that are doing this session last year, I apologize that you're doing this one last year. It was fun. I apologize if you do it again. But I think this exercise has a really good purpose, and I think once we're finished and we talk about it and why we're doing it, I really like
even
this
spelled it right
exercise.
She supposed to be the handwriting that was different.
That's fine.
You just became a different person.
My problem is I'm writing fast and this is too slow.
I know. I have to slow down to read it. My handwriting looks like my dad right now.
And this is better. Oh, you're right. I couldn't do it in cursive. Oh, it's super slow.
Okay, so we're gonna regroup here. I'm glad you guys are laughing. That makes me feel more comfortable.
Yes.
I'm sorry, having some fun with it. Just kind of shout some things out. How did you guys feel when writing with your non-dominant hand?
I feel like my child. He's in first grade.
Okay.
Oh, get better, get better.
Was anybody maybe a little anxious?
Yes.
Okay. How did you feel when you wrote with your dominant hand?
Oh, come on.
I like that.
At that point, it's like a chore. You're like, boom, boom, boom.
So what can we take away from this exercise? All right, with our dominant hand, it was most likely easy for all of us. It was fluid, natural, probably did not have a lot of difficulty. With your non-dominant hand, maybe you had to focus harder on the formation of the letters, the physical movement of your hand. Perhaps it required some more motor planning, which is when the brain has to plan how to physically move your hand, or if you're grasping the pencil or pen, whichever you have. Perhaps there was a difference in your confidence level. And this activity represents how students can feel in a learning environment. Some students, learning is very fluid, it's very natural, it comes easily, like you did with your dominant hand. With other kiddos, it can be really challenging. It can be hard, it can require a lot more focus and attention. It can be a challenge, right? Another thing that I noticed that I really love is some of you guys kind of peeked up to see if anybody else was done. And how many times do we see students do that in a learning environment?
Oh, you don't want to be the first one done with the test.
Right, they want to know, like, is anybody else done and I'm not, right? So this represents how individuals may learn, right? There can be also many variables that your brain is processing at one given time, which can make the learning process even more challenging. So right now, a few things going through my mind is the air conditioning running and the car that just drove by on the road and the fact that all of you are looking at me, right? There's all these different variables that your brain is processing as you're trying to learn or as you're sitting at your desk. And some students also have to work through really unique circumstances or difficulties, and that can make the learning process just a little more challenging. Okay? So I think can all agree here that the individuals learn differently. The learning process is different for all. So how do we teach to that, or how do we assist our students in their learning environment, which can be in a classroom for those of you that are teachers. It can be in your home setting for those of us that are all co-teachers probably at home. And to answer that, I think a really important question that we have to ask is we have to first understand our learner. You have to understand who you're working with. Do I have a visual learner? Do I have an auditory learner? Do I have a kinesthetic or tactile learner? Do you have a combination of all three? And here's the really fun part, is that it can determine, or it can be different for a subject or content. It can depend on the day. And then we use methods and techniques that appeal to them the most to assist in their learning. Okay? One of the biggest hurdles that we can face as educators is working to find that. So do you all know, just kind of off the top of your head, the people that you work with, the individuals you work with, do you know what works best for them? Do you know what maybe is a challenge, or what kind of what might trigger them as they're learning?
Trigger them to be upset, because I know what upsets my son.
Okay.
He has this issue where if he does not grasp it right off the bat, it's full meltdown mode.
Sure.
And then I have to like calm him down, and then we try to figure out a different way to explain it until I figure out however we're gonna get through to him until it finally clicks. And then he's like, "Oh, this is easy," and I'm like, "Why did we screen grab?"
Sure. So just understanding that it took you a couple different times, some trial and error to find out what worked for your kiddo. Does anybody else have an example or want to share?
If you are as lucky as I am, have two children that are complete opposites. So in the morning, our youngest, he likes to get up first thing. He sees his itinerary for the day and wants to nap. Our older child, Marshall, he's the opposite. What we found is, rather than giving him his whole list of what he has to do for the day so he can see it and prepare, just give him a little bit at a time. That seems to help a little bit because when he sees that whole list, that anxiety and everything kicks in. The other thing is when little brother gets his stuff all done 2 hours before older brother, that causes some issues too. And that's hard to separate them sometimes, but that is an issue that we know we have to deal with. So they are, and you've been around. They're completely different. They're completely different. I'm sure some of you are dealing with that, and that's something you have to just kind of learn how to handle.
I really want to hit on what you just said about chunking your work. I think that's a very easy and quick and beneficial way to sometimes break apart the work. And I think that can look different for everybody, right? Maybe you chunk it by day, within the day, break it apart. Maybe you do a break in between, or maybe you chunk the overall work.
And what you said, it depends on the day. So
And it
I mean, you wake up and you see what you're getting that day with that kid. Your plans go out the window.
You're like, oh, this is gonna take longer than I wanted it to.
And two, I think with chunking too, it does kind of help give them that I can walk away for a minute and I can come back. And I think we see that a lot of individuals actually need that.
And I think with him breaking that up into smaller victories, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like finishing that
Yes.
task is a victory, whereas
Yes.
he doesn't see it as the whole. He's got to get hold.
Yes. When we feel bits of success, right, it helps us keep going.
We had to do that during work last year where it was like one subject, play an hour.
Yes.
Another subject, you can play an hour. Because I mean, we only usually have like 3.
We would do math at night. Math was our most frustrating. We would do it the night before.
Oh, awesome. I've never heard that.
Get it done.
Ours was any day. So any day.
And then the day of all the other subjects was a lot smoother, but we knew we didn't have to deal with the one that was gonna.
Yes. Yes. And you find that works for your kiddo. So it sounds like it takes trial and error. Kind of sounds like you've all tried that. It takes some patience and observation. And obviously, we want to assist our students and our children with their success, right? We want to be there for them. We want to help them reach that. We want to see them experience achievement. That can be really hard. I want to move into this part about success and achievement because I think it's important to ask, what does that look like for student A? What does that look like for student B? And can success and achievement be measured the same way? What do we think?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so no. Can it depend maybe on the thing
Yes.
that you're assessing? Sure. So it can depend on subject, it can depend maybe on content matter, maybe on the objective. So sometimes I think we absolutely can measure it the same, but sometimes I think we have to realize that it's okay to measure it differently for different individuals. Incorporating differentiated instruction almost always appeals to all types of learners. Not necessarily using only reading and writing to teach can be hard for some of us. But recognizing that some learners might need various things in order to learn. Perhaps you need some more hands-on opportunities or manipulative work, which would be your tactile learning. Maybe for your visual spatial approach, they need that. They need to be able to manipulate things, move things around. Maybe including various opportunities to present knowledge. Does anybody have any examples for what that could be? Presenting knowledge. Does anybody think of a test right away? Kind of like a test style. So maybe another way that an individual could present knowledge would be verbally. Maybe they summarize the chapter for you in a verbal manner rather than writing out their response. Maybe you do a craft or an artistic activity, maybe like a diorama, and there's specific parts they have to include in that. So that might appeal to the person that is more of has more of an artistic ability. You could also do peer-to-peer teaching exercises, which I think some teachers do, and I think that's really great, where you teach to a peer, and then the peer teaches to you. So it's kind of another way that they can demonstrate their knowledge. Or even writing a different ending to a story that includes specific parts of the story you read, but it's demonstrating comprehension. It's still demonstrating comprehension. So tailoring instruction or activities within the learning environment to meet the needs of your students can be really helpful. Constraining the learners themselves. And I have an example here for you guys. But a teacher has a student that enjoys talking and sharing their thoughts and opinions in class. They like to talk about content that's covered or materials. And they are often eager to share their thoughts and participate well, and they participate well in classroom discussions. How might a teacher or co-teacher, how might they appeal to that student? What could they do in their classroom or in their home setting to appeal to that particular kid? Sure.
Lizzie, my oldest Lizzie is this child, so I have her teach me her math lesson half the time. So she's the in charge person.
Yeah, that's great. Does anybody else do that? Want to try that? Right. So role reversal. Having a student teach the class or teach the parent, teach a sibling. I've heard people say that they have. The older one teach the younger, or the younger teach the older.
We had we were doing like the readers last year,
Yeah.
and I mean, my brother had a lot of reading comprehension problems. So like Billy's very chatty, like he's that way too. Like he'll tell you the whole layout of a video he just watched. So I would have him like read the page, and then just to make sure that he wasn't just able to read the words, I had him like tell me what was happening in the story, like in his words. It was very confusing for him the first couple of times to figure out what I was asking him to do. I was like, what just happened? And then he'd read and tell me what happened.
I like that. I had a parent also share with me something they did in their home setting, which I thought was really, really cool. But they read a chapter, and the parent wrote specific parts of that chapter on note cards and mixed them around, and then had the child put those note cards in order of the events of the chapter. And I thought that was really neat. Rather than writing out or verbally explaining, that child was able to see the cards, manipulate them around, and put them in order of the events in the chapter. So that's just a different way. That does take a little more time because the parent had to write out the things on the note cards, but it was just a different way. So with different styles of learning, different intelligences, assessments can also vary. And also remembering that assessments can be formal and informal. They can be really quick too, just like a thumbs up, thumbs down style. But utilizing various methods in assessing student knowledge can help demonstrate student knowledge better. Some students do really well with multiple choice or fill in the blank. They do really well with a writing style of assessment. But some students may need to do it differently. And I have another example. A student has moderate to severe difficulty speaking fluently. Many of their sentences are often choppy, and they occasionally stutter. They also have extreme social anxiety, which they are working to intensely overcome. But their teacher decides to assess students in the classroom on a chapter from their reading book by coming to the front of the class and summarizing the chapter in 5 to 7 minutes. How do you think that student might feel regarding this form of assessment, or how might they prepare for that style of assessment? I wanted to kind of get your feedback on that. Okay, so you'd be terrified, sure.
I was this kid, so
Maybe we can relate to this on some
yeah. So I would literally have panic attacks in school when I had to do this in front of the class. But I got to the point where, in college, I had note cards, and I just repetitiveness and practice and doing it in front of in grade school. It was in front of my stuffed animals, and as I got older, in front of a couple of friends, practicing was the biggest thing for me.
So practice.
Yes.
Anybody else? Anything about that?
I mean, these days you could make a video. You could
Yes.
do a video.
Absolutely, we have access to media, to things of that nature. So yes, make a video. Could they maybe illustrate their comprehension, or could they do some form of artwork to show theirs? Maybe you do like comic strips. You do something like that. Could this child maybe do it with just the teacher, or just a peer and do like a one-on-one style? I don't know. I don't know. It could vary, but it was just an example. Could we maybe adjust the 5 to 7 minute time frame to 2 to 3? Would that be enough for this particular student? I don't know. It's just an idea. Some potential techniques that maybe you could incorporate into your learning environment, which again could be at home or here at school. The use of visuals. I think teachers do a really good job of this. I think they use really good pictorial support, visual aid when they're learning. Some multi-sensory learning opportunities, so appealing to the senses, appealing to auditory, to a visual learner, to tactile learner, incorporating those into your lessons. Listening to stories while following along. So the student that maybe doesn't want to read aloud in class, maybe they have a reader or something to help them follow along to track the reading. Maybe they specifically listen to someone else read aloud the chapter, which could be a co-teacher. It could be a peer, it could be the teacher. The use of audiobooks when applicable and appropriate depending on the age or the subject. Maybe incorporating small group activities with predetermined groups, or a rotation style of learning where you're rotating through different groups, and each group probably has like a different purpose of some kind. There's actually a family I know that kind of does this. They have multiple children and they actually do this, I think, in their homeschool, but they kind of rotate through where one sibling kind of pairs with the other, and then you rotate to the next and they pair up with other siblings. I thought that was kind of interesting.
You do that with co-parents.
Or with co-parents, sure. Yeah.
3 of us would do it.
Yes, and that way you're kind of rotating from one individual to another. You're kind of getting a different style, right?
Well, and that's also helpful for like subject stuff, because like I'm better at like the English part of what my son's doing, and my husband takes over like the biblical stuff because he was raised in a much more religious household, so like he's able to help out a lot more with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just play our strengths the best we can.
And I think it's important too what I kind of what you just said, but what's comfortable for you as a co-teacher, right? So if you are in a co-teacher setting where there's multiple co-teachers, kind of moving back and forth between what you're comfortable with the subject you're comfortable with, I think that's a really good idea. And then the incorporation of physical movement of any kind is almost always helpful, right? Especially you don't always want to sit for a long period of time. So I think any type of physical movement in terms of physically getting up and moving your body, or in terms of body movements and gestures. I think specifically of pre-K and kindergarten, and they use gestures and movements to learn their different things. I think they have one for like the days of the week song, I think.
They have the
Things like
days of
that.
the week, the months of the year. They did them for all their like
Right.
scriptures.
So kind of to conclude, and then I was hoping we could do a kind of question and answer a little bit, but finding a balance of what works for your learner and yourself while also creating and maintaining a structured and strong learning environment can be challenging. It's not easy. You want to engage your student, you want to capitalize on their interests, but you also want to come along beside them to help them expand their skill sets. You want to be there to help them move through their learning process. I would recommend considering and reflecting on who you're working with, for your student or your child, and try to find a balance of methods and techniques that not only appeal to them, but also work for you and your style. We all learn in different ways, and because we learn in different ways, we all process and recall differently. And because we do this, we perform differently. And I think understanding that and understanding your learner can guide your instruction, hopefully. It can guide your learning environment, whether that's home or school, and the techniques that you use in your teaching, in your environment. You utilize techniques, activities that are going to appeal to them, that's going to help them get there, right? Get there through their learning process. And that's kind of all I have. Are there any questions, or do you guys want to talk about any specifics? If you're not comfortable talking maybe about your own child or student, you can always talk to me afterwards, because I love to talk about this stuff. I'm very mild right now, but I do love to talk about this stuff.
So from a classroom teacher viewpoint, what do you think is the best way to incorporate like learning stuff? Like I'm walking into a new classroom, a new group of students, and I don't know how they learn. So is it just a good idea to incorporate different things and see how they react, or see how they?
Yes, I would say yes. If anyone else has a different idea, feel free to say so. But yes, I think trying different things, whatever that is. Maybe you're getting into your reading curriculum, and you read a little bit aloud. Maybe take note. Our kids really focus in on this. If I'm reading aloud, they need more of like a maybe like a peer-to-peer reading or an audiobook. But I don't know, not an audiobook, but a recording of the reading. If math is math's not going so well, what do I do? Maybe if you're able to incorporate more manipulative, or just some kind of hands-on learning, or try that. If that doesn't go well, maybe try more like a note style learning, where you are having them take more note-based things. Do you have a specific example?
I was just thinking, when you walk into a classroom, maybe the parents know what their learning styles might be for their student, but I really don't know coming in, and I just wondered if you have suggestions of how to kind of just switch it up and see how they react.
Yeah, and I think what you find works well, go with it. Right? If it works well, go with it. But maybe if you're trying something and it's like they're not responding well to this, they're not really listening to me, they're not acting engaged, then maybe try something different. I don't know exactly what that different would be right now, without being listening, but just something different. I also think too, not getting discouraged after like day one or even the first week. This is a side note, but I had a kiddo in a previous school year, and it took me the whole school year to get to know that kid. It did. I wasn't really, I didn't really like it, but it took the whole school year, and I think that's okay. If it takes a month, if it takes 2 months, if it takes the first quarter, not getting discouraged, which can be hard for all of us. It can be really hard. This is not working, what do I do instead? If you have maybe a really talkative group, or a group that really likes to share, maybe including specific points in your teaching for them to share. Specifically share, or giving them, you get 5 minutes to talk about this chapter or this math lesson, and specifically integrating those moments into your classroom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing about not to be discouraged. I've noticed with Brielle that there are certain things that used to really get her where she needed to go. But as she's growing up and getting older and maturing in some other areas, that those things don't really capture her attention as much anymore. And then some other opportunities or other tools to use that she would have been completely involved with. So I'm thankful that you mentioned that don't be discouraged. are where we have likes that we like now that we didn't like before, and
Right.
so thank you for sharing that vision.
Yes, I think we naturally want to see a quick response, right? We naturally want to see that this is working good. And so I think sometimes when we don't get that immediate response, we maybe feel a little deflated, or we're a little discouraged, like, okay, what do I do now? But I think it takes time. It really does.
And to kind of piggyback off all of that, I think it's important, like as co-teachers, that we give ourselves grace too.
Yes.
Like the first year, like I was so like, okay, this time we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this, blah blah blah. And I think by like the second week, I threw that out the window, and I was like, nope, like it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to like take a breath. You're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have good days, and sometimes they'll just fly through the work, no problem. And then other days, it's just not that way. And it took me a while to kind of tell myself like, it's okay. Like, you're gonna be fine.
It's
Get
hard
through
to do
this.
that.
It is hard.
It's hard.
I still struggle with it.
I do
but
too.
It's So I think that's important. Just kind of tell yourself like, give yourself grace.
Yes, yes. And for those two that have multiple kids, or two, or maybe you have 5 kids, I don't know, but for those that have a lot of kids, you do have to do that, because most likely all of your children are learning differently.
Yeah.
They're probably at a different stage, mentally, academically, social, emotionally. They're probably all at different levels. So, especially think of those of you that have multiple kiddos that you're trying to.
I thought the coolest thing last year was to see how the kids grew together.
Yes.
Even their class was kind
Man,
of
it was
wild.
wild.
They did grow together really well.
I don't know about you guys,
And
but
now
I've had
they wanna-
emotional outbursts with them not seeing all these
Oh,
other kids.
yes. Oh my
Yes,
gosh. Yeah.
right, yes.
They're
So
ready
it's
to go
been
back.
good. Yes.
Does anybody else have anything? Anything at all?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So my older son is very good at math. Like I don't have to help him at all. But then my younger son, like just simple addition or subtraction, he still has to like use his fingers and it takes forever. So do you have ideas for like helping? Like we've tried pencils and he counts the pencils, but like it takes forever for him. It just doesn't click, and I don't understand because everything clicked with my older son, so it was like, cool, this is great. Like I'm
Sure.
being effective, but like my younger son, I haven't found the thing that clicked with him yet. So
Sure. I do think math is a really good subject to include manipulatives or any type of hands-on
yeah,
learning. And you said you're doing pencils, so maybe finding the thing that he is the most interested in and utilizing that somewhat in math.
maybe like
Um,
Legos or something.
Yeah. Thinking of math specifically, does he do well? I know you said addition and subtraction. Does he do well with like a chart style or any type of, if you're doing addition and subtraction, not necessarily physical pieces he can manipulate, but picture on paper.
Yeah, that might help.
So not the physical
Uh-huh.
things, but in picture form.
Okay.
Also repetition. I know that sounds silly, but repetition. Working on it every day. You don't necessarily have to do flashcards, but maybe flashcards. Or I don't know if this is an idea, maybe for your son, but having him, once you go over a concept or addition, subtraction, having him retell it back to you, and seeing what he is giving back to you, and going from what he gave you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're missing these pieces because this is what you told me.
Okay.
So you're missing these pieces. Is it okay if I think about this one?
Yeah, for
Or
sure.
chatter?
Yes.
Is it okay if I get back with you?
Thank you.
Sure.
We just like have to build repeatedly.
A lot of times it's just
Oh.
and so I don't
What's
know.
3 plus 7?
Sometimes I try to like sit there for a second.
Sometimes he uses bigger. Then he tells
Yeah,
them we all like
things
celebrate,
like-
you got it right, or whatever.
But sometimes
Yes.
Just
Do
take
you
it.
find that the reading is due to he's overwhelmed with like a large chunk of text, or is
I
it?
don't know because sometimes
We have been speaking, we have a conversation about connecting your brain for years. A lot.
Sometimes
this goes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why Bill was able to see us. We just just randomly in the car. Just give him a math question. All through preschool, like, that was how we would look him up. He was really good at math. That's how we like get his brain awake and like going for the day.
Does he do well at all? Like you just said, you covered up the word. You said go. Yes, he did go with everyone. Does he do well with single line?
And he just, it's, like I said, he'll read it, like yesterday we did this, and so he read this over here, and we go over here and he won't read it. I don't know.
And that could be that he's maybe that recall piece, even though he did read goes, sing it over here, that recall might not quite be there.
Okay.
You could continue working on that piece.
Okay.
I think with reading is really chunking it, focusing on that, small pieces, and then eventually he gets that, moving into more pieces, like 3 or 4 sentences, and gradually building what he's singing. He could also just be overstimulated, sometimes that happens. Maybe if he's reading out of a textbook, is there a lot of things on the page that he's trying to look at?
I've done that, because when we have the cure reports, I'm like, okay, we don't need to look at this page, and then I.
Does that seem to help at all?
It does. I just feel like sometimes I just get discouraged too, like we do the best with it, and just want to do the right thing for him. So.
Sure. And does he read fluently, or does he have a little bit of challenge with decoding as well?
No, he does. It's just getting through right there. So yeah, trying to have that stuff.
Our boys are so active, getting them to stop long enough to read has been a challenge.
Yeah.
Sure. So maybe not quite motivated in reading.
No, that today when we were on our way because he had to go to his grandma's, and we went to Mom, he was reading things on the signs, and so I'm like, yay! So I'm
That's a
thinking,
challenge.
yes,
You
we're
gotta
going
do
to,
fast.
so I'm like, yay! And then, but then now tonight, if I say something, it might be like, Mom.
Oh, Bill does that too. And I asked him what he likes doing in the car so much. He said it's a challenge. I have to read it before we get past it. I'm like, okay.
So it's turned into a little bit of
A game for him.
game, motivational game. I think maybe trying smaller pieces, seeing how he does with that, moving into more pieces,
I
more
started
chunks.
I have little books that I have highlight all the sections, and then,
And does he track his reading well?
yes, most of the time. But maybe I should watch that too, because I'm just like, I'll watch it.
Some Bill trying to guess what's on the page by what's in the picture.
Yes, I had to do that. Come on, don't look at the picture. Don't look at the picture yet.
You guys too.
Oh yeah, Harper will just like, she won't even look at the words, she'll just make stuff up.
Yeah, that's, I
A
have problems
picture
with
of a
that
cat, she'll be like, I'm a cat. I'm like, that is not the
Yeah,
at all.
Or yesterday, he says, Mom, I can spell cat. I'm like, you're reading. I'm spelling right now. But I can spell cat. I'm like, okay, can you read? Let's read
6-year-olds are
this
fun,
sentence."
man.
And then we can start, because he's excited about spelling now. But I'm like, oh, let's slow down. Hard to spell it.
And I think too with reading, trying to find ways to motivate to read.
Yeah, that's I use Mr. Stinnett. I'm like, you don't want to let Mr. Stinnett down.
We had to use video games. He can't play certain video games until he learns to read.
Sure. I think with reading too, especially, it kind of sometimes becomes a thing of, I don't like to read, so I really don't
Yeah,
want to
and that's
do
what
it.
he's-
And that's hard
He's
to
full of
overcome,
it,
but
you don't even know. Reading's amazing. So I was just trying to.
does he do reversals when he reads?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay. Horrors?
Sometimes we can be both. Sometimes that's it. That's nice sometimes. And I know we have dyslexia in our family, so I don't want to push anything and say it not because my husband would do that. I'll put it out in the universe. But I also want to be on it. And in case there's something that's like, well, this would, I could have done this, and we would skip this part, and it makes it easier for you to learn. And sometimes I don't want, like I said, I don't want to push that. So I'm like, ooh, I don't want to put that out there yet. And I did ask, Mrs. Murgash, she's like, oh, it's okay. But he's going to do some of that stuff, turning things around, and it's,
Yes, it does
Yeah.
happen.
yes.
We still let her ease back for something to happen.
Sometimes I'll say, now look at him. Yes, he likes to do his E's. And then I'll say, look at him, and his name, Gilmore, you know, and he'll look, and he's like, oh, Mom, it's okay. But, let's try to work with it.
Okay. Interesting. Anybody else have anything? I hope this was
I feel like the first grade class has to get over.
Hope you took maybe something.
I know. 6 of the 9 families are here right now. Well, Christina was here. So.
I think
Yeah,
if you want to stick around and chat, I'll do that. I'm gonna think about